So, you're still running your school in Milwaukee?
Yes.
How long did you have that school for?
How long?
Yeah, first time I was there was 16 years ago.
Oh, 90, 94 I started actual school, so however long ago that was.
That's insane. That's 28 years, 20, 20, 20
Really?
something like
Oh, wow.
that. Like
Yeah.
4 years. That's a long time to be
Yeah, I
teaching.
guess it is.
Never really thought about it before, did you?
Not really, no.
Got you. It seems like you're still having looked at your website, it seems like you're still running a very similar program to the way you have been, right? And I mean that as a good thing. Most people, their schools are now money factories. They're trying this, that, and another to scrape every dollar they can out of people. And I saw your program is still cheaper than anybody's, and it's always been that price.
Yeah, I think I changed the price once, like it's probably 20 years ago now. It's probably been the same price for 20 years. As my wife rolls her eyes.
Are you still cornering fighters?
Yes.
Do you have anything coming up with your fighters?
I have one guy fighting on May 14th.
May 14th. Very cool. Very cool. I feel like every show I go to, you have one or two guys there. And it's been a while since I've been in a show in the area, but there was always just out of nowhere. There's one guy coming out of Adrian's. Didn't know who he was, but there's one guy coming out. There's always somebody coming out of your school. Always somebody ready to scrap.
Yeah, we usually produce quite a few. It's a matter of keeping them around.
That's how it is for everybody, though.
Right.
Right. The real life gets in the way of training, that kind of stuff. What was your introduction to combat?
Oh, I started judo when I was 5.
Damn.
Yeah, I know.
That's a long time to be grappling.
This number I know, so this tells you how old it is, how old I am and how long I've been doing this. When it was the 60s.
Okay.
Late in the 60s, but it was the 60s.
When what got you into judo?
I have an older uncle. I have an uncle that's like my brother, my mom's youngest brother. He's much younger than my mom, and he was in judo. When I started, he was like an upper teen, he's upper teens when I was 5, and that's who brought me into judo.
Got you.
He only lasted about another year,
and
I kept going.
That's how it always is.
Well, that was that life getting in the way. You know, he was becoming a young adult.
Yep. That's a big one of those big transitional periods. Is like you go from being a kid to a teenager, and suddenly they offer you 40 different sports, and then all the kids drop off, and then you go from being a teenager to an adult, and now you have like real world responsibilities, and all the people drop off.
Right.
Very few of us are capable of sticking around. Very few of us are lucky enough to stick around, or unlucky enough. I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
I consider it lucky.
Good for you. So do I. I'm very happy to still be doing the things that I'm doing. Were you the kid who was getting into fights before you got into judo?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
There wasn't much time before I got into judo. I started very young, but there was a fight before I got into judo when I was in kindergarten in Milwaukee.
Where did you start judo?
St. Francis Judo Club, but they had satellite programs when you started, and if I remember correctly, it was like Tuesday and Thursday for years and years. They had judo in the upper balcony at St. Francis High School, but then the instructor had like various first degree black belts or high brown belts that taught in rec programs around the south side, and I started with the I guess the judo program through the rec department of Muskego School District where I went to school.
Okay.
And then the idea was that you do I think the idea was to do 2 or 3 8-week sessions and all these different satellites. He had like New Berlin, he had Oak Creek, he had Muskego, and then get them all to event after 2 or 3 of these satellite programs, 2 or 3 like 8-week programs come to St. Francis High School on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Oh, judo was much bigger in the 70s. So that was just into the 70s.
Was that when the judo boom happened?
Yeah, I think I was right in the middle of it, so I think I never. When people say that, years later when I heard people talk about the judo boom, I never really a boom, I guess, because I wasn't around before it picked up. I just remember it dropping off.
Interesting. When did it drop off?
I would say in the 80s when Taekwondo picked up.
Oh, you think Taekwondo is what caused judo to drop off?
Taekwondo and karate both. You had in the 80s was the movie The Karate Kid, right?
Yep.
And also Taekwondo had the 88 Olympics as a big push, and the Taekwondo world was pushing it that Taekwondo was going into the Olympics from like 4 or 5 years out before that Olympics.
Oh.
Korea hosted the Olympics, and that was back in the day when host countries pretty much could add.
Yeah. That's still how it is. They have to get some sort of recognition, but I've heard about that.
Right.
That's very interesting. I never thought about. I was born in '91, so the idea of Taekwondo not being in the Olympics is like, what do you mean Taekwondo wasn't in the Olympics? Yeah. Interesting. Do you know what caused the judo boom then? Was that an Olympic thing?
It probably was a little bit because judo was in first Olympics in '64 Tokyo Olympics.
Okay, got you. How long did you train judo for? I mean, obviously you still teach a little bit of judo-based things, but
I was really until my early 30s.
Okay.
So a long time.
That is a long time. You were affiliated with Wahadachi, right? Like that's the big judo program in Milwaukee, right?
I really did. I've known Jim Peterson since I was a teenager, but I was never really part of their team until later years, and my affiliation with like official capacity with him is when I started to teach to help. I moved, like my school became half his school, but I was mostly as an adult, I was with Judo Incorporated.
Oh, that's where I did judo. I did judo with Norm for about 3 years.
I was probably there. You were just a little kid then.
I started judo when I was 10. Me and my little brother. My brother was 3. I was 10. Herb, who's I think a brown belt at Reds now, and his son Donnie were there. A couple other kids were there. So this would have been 20 years ago. I've been on the mat I've been grappling for 20 years now. So 2002 would have been when I started at Judo Incorporated on Titonia.
Oh, by then I was totally contrary on MMA, so I was just around judo a little bit, but I would have still been competing for Judo Incorporated until 95 and 96.
Very cool. It's a small world.
Yeah.
How'd you find mixed martial arts? What was it called when you first started fighting? NHB?
No holds barred or just cage fighting.
Okay.
I was always for a grappler. I was always pretty good with my fists. It came fairly natural to me. So when the UFC started, I was interested and already thinking about it as I was winding down competing in judo and sambo.
You competed in sambo as well?
Oh yeah, I thought you knew that.
No.
I competed a lot in sambo. It was in 6 or 7 world championships for the USA.
Just so, did you know that at one point you were ranked number 1 in the world in MMA? I think it was probably in 1998. You were the number one middleweight in the world.
Yeah, and then I fought Wanderlei Silva, and then that dropped off a bit.
I've heard about that fight. Bacon told me about that fight, so I've seen that one.
Oh, you and 3 million other people online. I've never watched it.
I can see why you wouldn't. But flying to Brazil and fighting Wanderlei Silva in bare knuckle back in the days when he was likely doing all sorts of crazy stuff right before the fight, it's an interesting experience. But I raised that point of your ranking for a reason. So a couple weeks ago, I did Henry Matamoros. At one point, he was ranked number 4 at featherweight. Before that, I did Omar Chowdhury, who was ranked like number 6 at 125. All of you guys are just like regular people in my life. So to hear that you did multiple world championships in Sambo is like, wait, what? This is just like the people, like you guys just grew up around you kind of people, right? I had no idea until I started doing this podcast, the insane accomplishments that had come out of you, that had come out of you guys. So 6 or 7 world champions in Sambo. That's super impressive. Super.
Competed in world. I didn't win 6 or 7. I competed. The way you said, I didn't want someone, because then you'd have people saying, "No, they lied. He wasn't a 6-time world champion."
That's a good point. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Were you competing in NHB back in the time when you had to go and pay to compete?
No.
Okay.
No. In fact, I was a person that was very much against there ever being such a thing as amateur MMA. And I resisted for a long time having any of my newer guys even do when Monty Cox, who ran Extreme Challenge for years and years, started doing amateur shows. I refused to send him anyone, and we had arguments over the phone that you have to do amateur MMA, Serrano. That you have to have some of these new guys do amateur MMA. I go, I'll get them ready to start pro like I did. My first fight was a pro fight.
Okay.
And growing up doing judo and wrestling all my life, I just had this in my head. I was like, you should get paid if people can legally throw punches at you. But I lost that argument. So.
Do you think that there's a
who paid to do MMA? I don't. Maybe I'm forgetting this.
I heard stories. I don't remember if Bacon did it, but I heard stories of people around that era, early 2000s, where like a Matt Hughes type would have to drive 4 hours and then you'd pay like $50 in order to compete.
No, I don't remember anyone ever paying. I remember I just had this conversation with someone else about, how good the fighters are and compared to our era. And I said that fighters nowadays are way more talented than my era, way more talented, but they might not be tougher. And I said, and my reason is, and I'm not sure about that, but I don't think many of them are like getting in 4 or 5 fighters squeezing into a minivan and driving across three states to fight in a bar that has a big back hall for bands and Friday fish fries. And on a Saturday, someone puts up a cage and calls it Extreme or Rage. There's all these different organizations there's like 1,800 different organizations, and all 1,800 either had the word Rage or Extreme in the title. Extreme this, Extreme that, this Cage that, this Fury that, this Rage that. They all had the same name essentially.
Basically, they still do. It all ends in FC at this point. Fighting Championship. Fury Fighting Championship, Cage Fury Fighting Championship. It's all the same.
Extreme, Fury, and Cage.
Yep, those are the words. That I should start one. Just that'll be the thing. EFC, Extreme Fury Cages. That's what do you do? You can't tell Extreme Fury Cage stuff. That's what we do. Sometimes it's ping pong, but it's extremely furious.
You have to every show would have unified titles because of all the names.
Like boxing.
Right.
That's like boxing. Did you study striking martial arts as well growing up?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
So you wrestled in school then, probably?
Yeah. Started wrestling however old. I should know this. My son's a 5th grader. So, yeah, like 10 years old, I started wrestling.
Okay.
That was after years. We had started judo a lot earlier.
So wrestling probably came pretty easy to you then?
If I wasn't being disqualified for throwing people too hard.
Oh, yeah. They have a lot of potentially dangerous in wrestling.
Right,
There's
right,
a lot less of that in judo. That
right.
makes sense.
But in the second generation, I taught my son how to drop his hip to the ground before he slams them on their back. So my son wins a lot of matches with the head throw to a pin. But
Nice.
he's I don't think has he ever had a penalty point for a throw? He's been like scolded a little bit and gets a lot of scorn from other moms off the mat, but he's never been like disqualified for a slam or even lost a point.
Okay.
He has over 300 matches now.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a
But
lot
I guess kindergarten, that's a lot.
for a 10-year-old. Yeah,
That's a lot of competition. There's grown men that don't have that.
yeah.
Like, I didn't wrestle that many. I didn't do that much in wrestling. I mean, if I did all my combat sports, I'd probably have that much, but like not just in 5 years of wrestling. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You guys must be driving him everywhere.
Well, that's the great thing about wrestling, even more so than judo or jiu-jitsu, is you can easily take anyone from first grade to eighth grade and get 40 or 50 matches in January, December, and March, and not travel more than 2 hours any given weekend.
Gotcha.
All these little communities have a wrestling club, and almost all of them have a tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wrestling very big in the Midwest.
Right.
I tried to find a place to coach wrestling in Texas, and they laughed at me. Not like why would you coach? Like, we don't have wrestling. What are you talking about? Who wrestles?
I was told a long time ago there's not that many Texas clubs, but the ones they have are very good.
Yeah, in the Dallas area and the Houston area, they put
Yeah.
out some decent wrestlers. Once you get closer to Oklahoma, it becomes more common. But I was in the middle
Right.
of nowhere where all they do is football
Oklahoma.
and turf fields. Very cool. So how long did you fight in MMA for?
12 years.
Oh,
Yeah, 12 years.
gotcha. Any of those memories stand out?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them stand out. I'm very fortunate to have traveled all over. I mean, I think the camaraderie and the travel stand out more. I mean, uh, going to Japan with other Americans, Gary Meyer and Jason Godsey, and going to Brazil with Henry, and going to Brazil with Mark Coleman and
Interesting.
Randall. He just passed away.
Kevin Randleman?
Yeah, Kevin Randleman going to
Kevin the Monster Randleman, yeah.
going to Brazil with those two was incredible because they were hugely popular in Brazil fight circles.
Okay. Anything interesting happened while you were in Brazil?
Yeah, but I don't think things I can talk about.
That's okay. I think the statute of limitations is passed.
Oh, yeah, another thing that really stands out, and it was I competed in the first Abu Dhabi World Championships.
I saw that when I was digging into the. Yeah, that's super impressive. 1998. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's on January '98, and I was on a team with Neutral Ground from California. That had Rodrigo. Fabiano Iha was on the team. Bo Hirschberger. Wait, what is it? Rico Rodriguez.
Rico Rodriguez. That's the leg kick guy, right?
What?
No, I'm mixing him with Pedro Hizzo. I was mixing
yeah.
up Pedro Hizzo and Rico Rodriguez.
Rico Rodriguez was from California.
Okay.
He's American. He fought in the UFC.
He was the heavyweight, right?
Right.
Got you. You had a UFC fight as well, right?
Yes.
I think you were the first. Either you or Dave Strasser was the first man from Wisconsin to make it to the UFC.
I was.
You? There you go. I got to add that to your bio real quick before we get out of here. That list of crazy accolades.
Yeah, that was the first Wisconsin fighter in the UFC.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. If you could go back and do it all over again, would you do it the same, or what would you do different? Well, would you do it again?
Yes, I'd do it again.
Okay.
I'd ask for more money.
Do you think you would get more money?
I don't know. I think there's things we could have did a little quicker on sponsorship. I was doing okay at it, but we could have done better with the sponsorship and tried to market our gyms better. The second group of gyms, or maybe the third group after if I was in the first group, are a little better at that than I am or was. You know.
But I mean, was it your intention to make all of your money from your gym, or was that just a passion project?
It was never a plan to begin with. It just happened that way.
What do you mean?
Well, it was I loved what I was doing, and when I started to realize that the best way to train was I had to build I had to build some training partners around me, and then I realized that a lot of people will pay to be trained and train with me, and then I realized I could make a living basically building a training camp around me.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So when
you just mentioned a bunch of my names of my earliest guys. I mean, Henry and Omar Shack, and I mean, you remember guys like Rob Smith and Theo Brooks.
I don't know who Theo is, but I know Rob Smith.
Yeah, those are all the early guys that I brought in around me and my team. You know, so they were paying that at $60 a month, or before that it was $45.
$45 a month. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was probably for the first 10 years, I think. I don't know.
That's insanity. The fact that you could still get away paying $60 a month. I know why your wife rolls her eyes at that.
Yeah, she is again. She likes you, Josh.
There's a couple of gyms in that area that I won't name drop specifically, but I know that they're over $200 a month.
I've heard that.
And they're on contracts and like, oh, we gotta pay a year in advance to get it to that for all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
He who must not be named.
Right.
The big ones. But yeah, that's so when you were doing judo, did you ever have intention of having a judo school, or was this it just happened because you needed training partners?
No, you mean like own a judo school?
I guess, yeah. The reason I ask is when I was 5 years old, I already knew I was going to have my own martial arts school. Right? My dad has a couple black belts, so I started training the day I was born. By the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I knew I would have my own school. I don't have one yet, but I didn't know what kind of school. It feels like a predetermined plot point. Right? So was there ever like a plan?
No, there wasn't. Well, part of it was that there's really not that many people that run judo schools as their main source of income. Yeah. Most judo schools are a part-time gig, and they have other occupation. There's only really a few. I only think of a couple in the Midwest, and most of the ones that do are the judo Olympians that now run gyms. You know, you're in New York, Jason Morris and Jimmy Pedro.
Yep.
On the East Coast, and then there's a couple other ones, but most judo school owners are judo school. Their judo school is a hobby of something they just love, and they have a day job.
It's their passion project.
So that's who I grew up around. So it wasn't going to come in my mind to own a judo school to make a living from it.
Got you. Did you Did you find that you had to make a lot of adaptations to make your judo work in MMA?
Well, yes. Mainly, I'm mainly the closing the distance safely. You don't have to worry about closing the distance in judo, and worry about getting there safely. Your opponent wants to close distance too. I mean, there is some closing the distance, but not to the point where it's dangerous to get there. And then most people do judo with their strong side forward. So most righties fight with their right hand with a right hand lead,
Okay.
which opposite than you should fight where you should fight, of course.
Got you. Opposite of boxing. Wrestling works the
Right.
same way. Yeah.
Wrestling too.
Interesting. Have you ever thought about why that is? Why they tell you why?
Well, in wrestling and judo, you usually want to control with your strong hand forward.
Okay.
So your strong hand forward keeps you is in a better position for you. For a striking sport, you want your strong side back for your power.
Got you. Got you. I've been doing a lot of thinking about that. And you in the early days, you would see a lot of people who they had all this experience with their right hand forward, and then they met a striking coach who said that's all wrong. You have to do it from the
Yeah,
back, and they didn't have that ability to transition.
I
But we,
remember having a conversation with here's a name, Don Fry.
I know that name. It's before my time, but I do know that name. Big
He does a podcast that I hear is hilarious
Really?
still. But you know, early UFC heavyweight champion back in the single day tournament times. You know, not the reigning champion type thing, but when they did single tournaments, and you were the UFC heavyweight champion until the next 3 months. You know, when they
Okay.
had the next tournament,
Yep.
and then if they wanted to someday down the road, they have a super fight between guys that had been the champion once or twice each. But
Mm,
Don was a great wrestler, wrestled for Arizona State, and we had a conversation about judo and wrestlers with right-handers with their right side forward, and we were watching fights, and we were pointing out how many guys were wrestlers because they were right-handed, staying with their right side forward and pulling back their lead hand to try and throw a power punch with their lead hand. And Don Fry was a good boxer, and did some boxing right after college, and then years later went to MMA, and he was one of the first really good boxers with a strong wrestling background. I had the conversation with him years and years ago, and like 99 or maybe 2000 about good wrestlers and good judo players trying MMA and with their wrong stance, and you could tell right away because they'd be trying to throw a power like a jab with their right hand and cock it back and throw it very awkward
mm,
looking, and you knew right away what was going on.
that makes sense. I heard Boss Rutan used to teach people to punch like that because he didn't believe the jab was an effective tool in MMA. He said you can't hurt anybody with a jab.
Yeah, part of his reasoning was part of his. I don't know if it's changed, but a long time ago, I had the conversation with him too about it. Was part of his whole thing was because of the takedown and because of the clinch and the clinch in fighting that the refs will let go forever, unlike boxing, which will break up a clinch.
Mhm.
And most kickboxing will break up a clinch too. But his reasoning was that you're only going to get so many strikes if you're a better striker than your opponent, because your opponent's going to then just try and take you down. If you're a better striker, you have to make
Mm,
every possible strike count. So that's why he liked the right side, your strong side forward, to have give up a little power, or maybe give up a little bit of telegraphing to try and land your power shot, because that shoulder is that much closer. Because his reasoning was
gotcha.
you only get so many shots before the person goes, I just got to take this guy down.
That makes a lot of sense.
Not an option in boxing and kickboxing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
That
And
was
coming
his
from
that was his reasoning, is that it was
yeah.
all about how many times you will get to land something before the person tries to take you down.
Hmm.
And
I
if you
never
were
thought about
if you were that much better striker, you'll knock them out before they and Boss Ruden, pop 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 pop, they're down. You win, pop pop pop, you win.
Very cool.
I'm a big fan of Boss Ruden. My son's middle name is Boss.
Ow. All right.
Yeah, my son is Adrian Boss Serrano.
Got you. Did you compete against Boss ever?
No, but I met him a few times.
Okay.
I
Good
remember
for you.
one of my first big trips to Japan. When I started fighting for Pancrase, he had just stopped a year or so earlier, and I think we were at the Yokohama Dome, and it was a big show. Like Yokohama, that dome hosts like 14,000 people. So I'm this
That's
relatively new fighter fighting in Japan in front of 14,000 people, but they would open up the upper level first before opening up the lower level, and the athletes would still be warming up in the lower level, and people would start to fill up into the upper level. And I was jogging around, and I kept going around this one corner where people were gathering. I kept hearing them yelling, "Boss, boss!" And I thought Boss was there, and I was looking around, thinking, and then I realized they were saying it to me.
they thought you were Boss Rutan?
Yeah, and, about the second lap, I started going, "No, boss, no, boss." But
Got you. Got you.
I suppose
Um,
when you couldn't tell the size from a little bit of distance and the shaved head, you know,
yeah. Is he bigger than you? I'm
he's
on
tall.
paper.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
boss is easily 5'11", 6 feet tall.
Okay. You got a couple inches. Got you.
Oh yeah, few.
That makes sense. How many times did you go out to Japan?
I actually don't even know.
Too many?
Too many. Yeah,
Too many.
yeah. Well, plus there for judo a few times, and the '96 Sambo World Championships was in Japan, and I fought for one, two. I fought for three different Japanese companies. I fought for an early one called Kingdom. I fought for Pancrase, of course, for a couple of years. Then I fought for Deep.
Deep. I haven't
Deep.
heard
Yeah.
of it.
I think it still exists, but it came along later. Oh, I fought
Hmm.
for Rings too. I fought for Rings
I've
too.
heard of rings. They had weird rules, right? You could
Yeah.
only like you could slap on the ground or something like that, but you couldn't do regular ground and pound or I forget what they had.
No, it was the early years of my first year of Pancrase was open hands, no gloves.
Okay.
But the weird rules of Rings will stand you up real fast.
Hmm.
So of the MMA promotions, Rings favored the strikers.
Okay. That makes a
Uh,
lot of sense.
yeah,
It was interesting that each MMA school had a different sort of development to like there was no standardized rule set. And across countries there still kind of isn't, right? Like within the US there largely is, but when you go over to one FC, they for a while allowed soccer kicks over there and knees to the head of a downed opponent. And then they said they needed to take it away to make it more appetizing to
right,
the average viewer.
right. Yeah, yeah. In the U.S., you have the unified fight rules, and almost everywhere adopts the unified fight rules. And a lot of foreign countries even adopt the unified fight rules, especially if the UFC's roll through the country.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a lot of the other countries have a different rule set.
Do you follow modern mixed martial arts?
Oh yeah, I still do.
Have, have you noticed the resurgence of judo techniques?
Yeah, but I, I think that just a natural flow of things.
Definitely.
Things will get popular for a while, and then the defense gets better at stopping certain things, and things will move on. You know,
Right
um,
now, there's a big development of trips and throws against the cage.
right? A lot of the inside Ojigari against the cage. Uh, the small cheap small cheap takedowns and judo or throws are being used with efficiency against the cage.
Mm-hmm. They weren't really readily available for a long time because of the way that people fought, but now they're being used to counter wrestlers, which I find
Right.
very interesting. I like to watch how the meta develops. I'm interested to see what the next thing is going to be because I didn't see that coming.
No, I
I
don't
had
think you
no.
usually do.
I thought that jujitsu would be the one to counter wrestling, not judo would be the one to counter wrestling. Because how many judokas come into MMA and are effective?
Yeah, not many.
There's not a lot of, and I think part of that is the like MMA is illegal in France,
Yes.
and that is specifically because of the Judo Federation.
Yeah, the French Judo Federation is super powerful. Very
Yeah,
powerful, not in sheer numbers and very connected politically with to be able to control sanctioning bodies.
I think it recently became legal, like in the last 6 months or so, or is about to become legal. Because I think I heard that the UFC is headed there soon, or is planning to head there soon. But yeah, for years, some of the best judokas come out of France, and
Yeah,
they don't transition to MMA because they think that it's going to be bad for judo,
yeah,
which is interesting because look at how big wrestling got.
yeah.
Like, how many more people want to wrestle? Like, if all of a sudden a bunch of if 20 more Ronda Rouseys showed up, how many more
Right.
people do you think would be at Adrian Serrano's combat sports gym? Like, oh, Adrian's got a black belt in judo and he teaches MMA. 100% is where I gotta go.
Yeah, right.
It would be very, very big, very good for you guys. Good for judo in general.
Right.
Interesting. Who is anybody that you're watching that you think is like an? I'm trying to figure out how do I like an up and comer that you don't think people are paying enough attention to.
Well, I really like Mackenzie Dern.
Yeah.
Um, and well, he's drawing a lot of attention, so it doesn't quite figure the kid with the featherweight or lightweight with the also does the multicolored hair. Um, striker.
Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, yeah.
Sean O'Malley, he's a bantamweight, but yes.
Oh, he's that light. Yeah,
Yeah, he fights at 135. He's real small. Very interesting fighter, though. Very, very interesting fighter. He does things that other people don't do.
right, right.
Very cool. Do you? One of the things that Jake Clip told me when I interviewed him was that when a fighter shows up, he can kind of see what what they might be as a completed project, completed product. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? They show up as a raw talent, and he can see what they're going to be if they do things right. And it's not always right. Do you have that where you can see what this fighter is going to be?
Yeah, to a certain extent. To a certain extent, but um, I guess I see it like in a perfect world if I can keep this person training for a long time. Um, and a lot of it is a lot of it is talking to a new student in the very beginning and kind of understanding their influences. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting to know that person early on and knowing that they just don't seem like they have the grit that's going to put in the hard work on the ground or the will be able to take the punch standing. And you kind of get a feeling for that. Okay, I can make something of this person, but they're gonna be more of a wrestler. They're gonna be a a scrappy wrestler. There could be a scrappy stand-up fighter. But then you also, at the same time, when you're starting to learn someone like that, you're gonna learn. You kind of learn early on with their personality. You get a feeling of their of their work ethic.
Hmm.
You get an understanding of their work ethic in some of the first maybe month you know somebody, because you start to hear about somebody training and they um, just from the early conversations when you hear someone talking about doing work outside of, whether it's school, whether they're talking about schoolwork or kind of just kind of just a entry level job as a 20-year-old, kind of entry level jobs, making ends meet kind of jobs that 20, 21, 22-year-olds have. You start to get an understanding of how hard they're working at. Okay, the job sucks, but do you work hard at it, or do you go and punch a clock and be as lazy as you can? And a lot of times these guys are telling you these things, and in a way, they're bragging on themselves that, yeah, I go in, but I don't do much. I don't, but they don't realize that they're talking to a coach that's thinking about, well, yeah, but I might want to train you someday when I want you to train really hard, and some of it's not going to be so much fun, and
Gotcha.
it's not going to be glamorous, and it's not glamorous to it's not glamorous. It's not fun to not go out on Fridays and Saturday nights, or at least not too late, because your coach wants you in at the gym on Saturdays and Sundays at 11 o'clock to train.
Hmm.
You learn a little bit about somebody, and you know that you might be able to change it to some extent, but some of it, I'm meeting them in their early 20s. It's not like I'm starting them out at 13 years old where I could try and change their habits. Maybe that's what I should do, but I I kind of don't have the stomach to train that many teenagers.
Got you. So you learn more about who a fighter is going to become through their personality rather than the skill set they bring you.
Yeah, because I think it's it's a bigger factor. It's a
That
bigger
makes a lot
factor.
of
It's a bigger factor.
fighting.
I mean, someone could be. I mean, you see these 18, 19, 20-year-olds come in all the time that are just great, phenomenal athletes, and then they start talking about their job or school, and it's like, oh, but you like being lazy. Okay, well, I hope we can change that a little bit, but we'll see.
Got you. I've
You
never
like
heard
just you like
anybody.
you like just getting by. Okay, we'll see.
Hmm. I never thought about that angle. Like fighting is an art, right? And art is an expression of the soul. I think that fighting is the purest form of it, one of the purest forms of expression, right? Like you can't hide who you are in a fight.
Right.
You will really truly see. I think the most intimate things you can do with somebody is fight them and fuck them.
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
Like, you know that person more than anything else.
Right, right.
If you've done either of those two things, much less both of those things, you know exactly who that person is. But I
Well,
never
yeah,
thought about.
that's like the truth comes out in 15 minutes in a cage.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. You learn a lot
all
about yourself. You learn a lot about the other person.
all the
Uh,
trash talking, all the trash talking's over. What gym you're from's over. How noteworthy your coach is in your corner is over. It's 15 minutes of truth in the cage.
hmm.
Not much else you can hide behind.
Is that why you fought?
I don't know. Maybe I like I liked getting paid to fight. Um, I I guess looking back, I probably felt restricted by. I was good at it, but I felt restricted by growing up. doing grappling, and when I got the opportunity to compete somewhere where I could punch somebody and get paid for it, I liked that idea. And obviously, I liked it a lot because I fought a lot in 12 years.
You have almost 100 fights, or over 100, just over 100.
Yeah, over 100.
That's ridiculous. Like, nobody does that. That's insane.
Nobody does it anymore, that's for sure. But we were then. I wasn't the only one.
It's you and Travis Fulton.
Travis Fulton. And Rich, Shannon the Cannon Rich. And
I've heard of him too. Shannon Rich, he's got a lot of fights. I think Shonie Carter's got a lot of fights too. I don't think he's got that many, but I know he's got a lot.
Shonie, yeah.
Interesting.
Even Jeremy Horn, because he took a while to get to the UFC too. So he had a lot of fights before he got to the UFC and was able to, under a contract, to slow down.
Really? Oh, because there just wasn't.
Right. Because you were under contract to only fight for the UFC, and they only came to you twice a year.
Got you. That makes sense.
3 times a year.
Yeah. Now you could fight. If you're Cowboy, you could fight 6 times a year, but that's still that's crazy. You fought 6 times this year?
Yeah.
Did you do a lot of tournaments?
You mean like the 8-man MMA or 4-man, 8-man tournaments?
Like 2, 3, 4 times in a night, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I fought twice in a night and 3 times in a night, quite a few times.
Are you glad those things don't happen anymore?
I wouldn't say glad. I wouldn't mind seeing him once in a while. Very selective. But overall, I think is probably a better product for the fans, and safer on the fighters not to have 8-man tournaments all the time, because I think your fight career will be much shorter if every time you fought you were going to fight 3 times in a night. I did a few times, but I also was more of a grappler, so I wasn't gonna, especially on a night where I was expecting to fight more than once. I never went into one of those with any kind of plan to stay on my feet for very long.
Got you.
I wanted to get the guy to the ground and not exchange standing up. Probably a big part of my longevity of how long I fought and how many times I fought was the fact that I took people down right away. Lots of fights. Looking back, I look at some of the ways as described by the old fight media as I was actually a very boring fighter. I remember the way I'd read it, and I'd read. You around when there was a Full Contact Fighter magazine?
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it? Ever see an issue?
No,
Oh, they're online now somewhere, I think. But I used to I'd read those, and the way they described me, I'd be like, I know this is supposed to be a compliment, but another blue collar win for Adrian Serrano. Another workman style effort. I can't remember the other one, but that was one I got that one more than once. Another workman style victory for Adrian Serrano. Another blue collar night and win.
Sounds like uncreative writers.
Yeah. Basically, the nicest way they could say he won, but didn't. No one was all that thrilled. They were just like, nice, he won again.
Were you a very strategic fighter?
I think so. Yeah, I think I was very strategic. I definitely always had a game plan, a backup to. I knew where I wanted to take the fight right away, to the point where I know that to the point where I knew that my usual MO was to go to the center of the ring and try and circle 180 degrees in the ring and then drive forward for a takedown. Because here's Josh. If I go out of my corner and circle 180 in the ring and then drive forward, where do I end up?
Right back in your corner.
Yeah, with him on his back, with my opponent's head right next to my coach's, or in my case, people I trained, but they were my cornermen.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan was always to go out, circle 180, and drive forward. So I put him on his back right in front of my helpers.
That's very interesting because there's not today. That's an advanced idea, right? Like you have to be most people that are doing that kind of thing are wily veterans.
Yeah.
The average new fighter isn't thinking about the positioning within the cage. They may be thinking about putting you against the wall versus being in the open space, but very few of them have the awareness to return you to their corner.
I think that's the plan. Once they get them down, is to try and get them to their corner. Mine was to get them positioned to start the takedown with the landing in sight where I wanted them. I knew where I wanted to land them on the takedown or on the throw, to the point where I would go out and I'd be aware of, if I was turning 180, I wanted to shoot a double and drive him back to his cage. If I got stopped and I didn't circle at all yet, it was a head throw, so I'm sending him back towards my corner. If I circled 360, it was back to a head throw, because then I'm going back to my corner again.
Wow, you put a lot of thought into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
well, to the point where I had whoever was cornering me with the highest pitched voice was the one talking first, so I could concentrate on where that high pitched voice was, because that's where I knew where my corner was. This isn't going to be published, is it?
You're already live.
I know, but think about what I was doing there. I was saying, okay, I have three of my fighters. Okay, I have, let's say it's Omar Shack, Rob Smith, and Tim Panacucci. And Tim Panacucci is my buddy who I saw yesterday. And we're talking fighting 20 years ago. But I saw him yesterday because he has a son wrestling too.
Mm-hmm.
Who's one of my son's best friends that's not on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
So if Tim's the one talking, I know what his voice sounds like, and that's where I want to. That's where I want to take the throw.
Gotcha.
Or if another one would be Brian Zorn. If Brian Zorn is talking until it gets down to the ground, then I know I'm concentrating on his voice. I'm trying to take the thrower to take down towards Brian's voice, because then I'm going back to my corner.
Very interesting.
So is that strategic?
That's pretty strategic. That's a lot more strategic than I ever put.
Then I guess it was strategic.
And this is before you could even study your opponent, right?
Yeah, it didn't matter, because just as long as I was trying to take down the other guy in the cage that was shirtless, because usually the referee had a shirt on. So as long as I was trying to take down the other guy that wasn't shirtless,
Did you run into a couple of shirtless referees?
Huh?
Did you run into a couple of shirtless referees?
No, I was fearful of those kind.
Oh, okay. Just in case.
Just in case.
It might be 2-on-1. I never know. He looks like he's ready to rumble.
No, I never fought in Poland.
Oh yeah, they do all sorts of crazy shit out there. Poland and Russia. I've seen team MMA.
Yeah, the team and the different level fighting surfaces and the.
That I haven't seen.
Well, they have this one. There's one show where there's like these, like, they're like, like some of the like padded boxes for elevation jumps.
Yep.
They have like those kind of things, and people are higher than other people, and you take someone down, you could take them down at waist high and drive them up onto the thing, and you crawl up with them there.
Interesting.
And I think they try and encourage that, because then your roll to an escape might not just be a roll, it might be a roll and a crash. Drop down like 3 feet. Someone showed me online.
Have you ever seen the arm wrestling MMA fights?
No.
So, have you ever seen like professional arm wrestling on ESPN or something?
Yeah, flipping through.
It's real dumb, right? So they go and they tie your hands together like you're arm wrestling.
Yeah.
Now you have an MMA fight.
Oh, I didn't know they did that.
There's a table in between the two of you. You see people throwing head kicks over tables. I saw a guy try a flying arm bar. He's hanging off the table, wailing on the other guy with one hand as he's trying to arm bar the arm that's tied to him. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. But different elevations, that might trump it.
Poland or Russia?
That one I think is Russia. I also saw they did team MMA fights. It was 5-on-5.
Yeah,
It
I
was
saw the.
Brazil versus Russia. But the problem with that is as soon as one fighter loses, now it's 4-on-5.
Right.
And then it's very quickly 3-on-5 and 2-on-5 and 1-on-5.
3-on-1, and yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work out that well. The idea was very interesting. Kind of like what was the organization that did team fights?
IFL.
IFL. That was the one. That was because they would like pull you out of your camp, and now you got to go train with that team, and that was a very strange one. I wish that had worked out though, because that would have been an interesting way to do it.
Yeah,
Kind of like
I was rooting for it too.
Kind of like when Bacon was doing the NCGA.
Right.
Right, like it's an interesting concept that just kind of didn't go in the direction that we wanted it to go.
I saw Bacon yesterday too at the state kids wrestling tournament.
Really?
Yeah. A daughter and a son, or two daughters.
He's got two daughters and a son.
I think I'm not sure which. I saw one of the daughters in the warm up area, and I know he said I think he only had two competing. But I can't remember if he said my two daughters or he said my son and my daughter. But I think he only had two competing. But my wife said we've been at a tournament and saw him a couple years ago with three competing.
Okay.
He was in his son was in juniors division, right, hon? No, I think his son was in a division with my son one time. They didn't wrestle, but Bacon was just like, wow, because the junior walked through that tournament. Like, I don't think he got out of the second round. He like three first round pins.
Okay. Yeah, Weston's got to be the same age as your son.
Yeah.
Pretty close, give or take a year.
There's probably a wall chart. There's probably a wall chart in the next room we could find that would say Weston Hutter.
Probably, yeah.
He has two daughters. They're competing.
Oh, my wife looked it up quick on track wrestling. His two daughters competed in the Wisconsin kids wrestling tournament yesterday.
Good for them.
And they were both wrestling because all the girls division, regardless of the age, go on Saturday.
Okay.
I saw one of them in the warm up area.
Got you. I wonder how they did. I hope they did well. I haven't spoken to them.
I can find out soon. How'd they do, hon? A first and a third.
Wow. Good for them.
Yeah, Bacon.
I remember.
He has these big mutton chops now. I saw him.
He used to grow those from time to time when I was around him a lot.
No, these were longer than I ever saw on him. Longer than I ever saw on him.
Okay. Got you.
Not like that one referee that used to have him down to his belly.
That dude's crazy.
Yeah.
He calls that whole thing. It starts here, goes all the way out to here, and he calls the whole thing a mustache. Like, yo, if it touches your ears, that's not a mustache anymore. If it touches your ears and your belly button, I don't know what you're calling that, but it's not a mustache. He's got to tuck it into his shirt for the whole thing.
Right.
I'm super glad to hear that Bacon's got his kids competing in wrestling and that they're doing well. Lydia and Kimura they were good kids. Awesome. So why are you still involved in combat sports after all these years?
Why am I still involved? Well, I guess one of my goals is, okay, my son's in 5th grade, and I'm old. I'm closer to 60 than I am than 55. And I have a son that's in 5th grade.
Yeah.
My goal is to be able to still wrestle with him when he's a senior in high school.
Interesting.
So I still got to hang in there.
You got 8 more years.
6, 7 more years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay.
So, and then the bigger thing is that I love teaching people, and there's not many other things I could teach people than sounds bad. I'm really good at teaching people how to hurt other people. I have a knack for it, and I like teaching people. I love the look that I get on a student's face when they get it. When
Okay.
that look when I mean, there's a look for a long time when you're teaching the okay, kickboxing, a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You do it forever, and there's that look on their face like I get it, but they don't. But then there's that look when they really get it.
Got you.
Oh, and then the same thing on a double leg takedown when that look they give you when they really when they have that moment where they go, wow, I got it, or this Kimura or this armbar,
Mhm.
anything. I love that look on my students when they get it, you know. And I mean, going back, that's kind of why I like keeping the tuition costs down, you know, because I think I could reach more people that can afford to come to my gym, and probably people that need it.
Yeah.
Probably people that came more people that came from um uh, not such a good starting point in life, and I can teach them something, and they get when they get it. And even though I'm teaching people how to beat up people, whatever, and maybe they'll go in a cage and make money doing it, maybe they won't. But if I can teach somebody to put in the time and effort and work on learning how to do a triangle choke, on learning how to do a combination that finishes with a Kimura, they're learning a skill to be able to accomplish other things in life, things that have nothing to do with fighting, because they have to put in the hard work to learn how to do that combination that's going to finish in a triangle, or that combination that hand techniques that end with a leg kick. You know, a kickboxing combination where you come in with kicks and ends with hands. If they put in the time and effort to figure that out, they could do lots of things.
I've heard that from a lot of coaches that learning how to fight teaches you a lot more than how to fight.
Right.
There's a lot of lessons that you can take into regular life. I firmly believe that jiu-jitsu made me a better human being. And if I were to stop training, I would start to decay. Right? Because I've seen it. When I don't have the ability to train right, I'm not the same person.
Yeah.
Right? I'm glad to hear that. Super, super glad to hear that. Interesting. You stopped fighting because of like a knee injury or something, right?
No, it was more just time. You know, I fought till I was 44, Josh.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, I remember.
I was getting old. I mean, I felt good, but also part of it was somewhere about 41 or 42. Cutting weight became real hard, and
Okay.
I'm actually I'm on the short side even for a middleweight, let alone a welterweight. Or I said it backwards, but I'm on the short side for a welterweight, even and especially for a middleweight. If I was taller, I might have felt like going a little even longer because the cutting weight was getting so hard. But if I would have had started to compete at 205 because cutting weight to make 185 was getting so hard, I would have been giving up so much reach and height against 20-year-olds when I'm 40. I mean, my last fights. I mean, my my last couple. There were a couple of my last fights. I was fighting people half my age.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think my second to last fight, I fought a 19-year-old. I'm 44.
That's my very first amateur fight was up in Escanaba, UP.
Yeah.
And like 2 fights before my fight, some dude in his 40s had his very first MMA fight, and he fought like some 19-year-old, and he beat the ever living shit out of that kid so bad that all the fighters left the locker rooms, stopped warming up, and stood there in the cage like, what the fuck is this? We thought this guy was gonna die. Like this old guy was gonna die. And then it was 3-10-7 rounds. I don't understand how they didn't finish it.
Wow.
And they don't have sanctioning in Escanaba, so or at least they didn't in 2013 or whatever this was.
Yeah.
Right. From that day forward, I never thought like, oh, you're too old to fight. Nah, I've seen it.
No.
you I forget who it was, but one of the guys who's like in his 40s or 50s says like, no, I could still fight, I just can't. Jeff Monson.
Yeah.
Jeff Monson said, I can still fight, I just can't. I can't show up to the gym every single day and be the guy I need to every single day.
Yeah.
Because some days you might show up and you might still be king of the world, and then the next day you can't get out of things that you should have been able to get out of because your body just doesn't listen anymore.
Some of it is with myself and with other guys I've talked to as they got older is, well, for me personally, definitely, I had enough respect for the game that I wasn't going to keep fighting if I couldn't train right. I could have maybe fought longer, but not trained properly, and just told promoters, hey, I'll fight, but if you get me somebody that's, use me as a stepping stone. I'll, somebody that's a little over, 500 record, because I'm not training that much. I'm training once a week, twice a week. I would never wanted to be about that. And I know there's some older guys that are like that, and that's fine if that's what they choose to do. I just couldn't bring myself to present myself as a fighter without knowing that I was properly prepared to fight that night. I had too much respect for the game, and actually, to this day, I still with that same rule in mind for myself. I'm not one of these gyms that put people out there too fast. There's a lot of gyms that put people out there too fast, and it's the same. It's the same kind of rule. It's respect for the game. You can find people that are just tough and talented. You can train them for a month and throw them out there and see what happens. But are you respecting the sport of preparing somebody? I mean, you don't have to prepare someone to be a world champion before their first fight, but you should be prepared somewhat at all to a certain level in most all aspects of the fight game, instead of just rushing them out there because and there are gyms out there that are rushing people out there because they want to be at the shows with 6-7 fighters,
Yep.
And there's 6 or 7 fighters and 6 or 7 fighters from Gym XYZ, but four of the 6 have trained less than a year. They want to get them out there fast, and the same reason why I fought as long as I did, but then it was time to call it quits. Was my making 185 became really, really tough, and the idea of going up to 205 would have been too short. The reach would have been unfair. Plus, I was getting to the point where I knew I couldn't prepare the way that would be respectful of the sport.
How do you know when somebody's ready?
Honey, this battery's running low. My assistant tells me. But how do I know? Well, I know when they can spar on Tuesday, when they can do MMA sparring on Tuesday, and I have to tell them to do less rounds on Wednesday than they want to. Did I say that right? What I'm saying is, if they spar hard on Tuesday, and I actually have to tell them I don't want to spar in as many rounds on Wednesday as they want to, because they have they have the desire to want to go more than I think they should the second day.
Okay.
If I see that desire, okay, I mean, if they spar 8 rounds, they spar eight good rounds on Tuesday, MMA sparring on Tuesday, and they want to come back and spar 8 rounds of kickboxing on Wednesday, but I know their body's running out, but they were there to do it. They showed up to do it rather than the guy who didn't show up.
Got you.
That's more of the point. The guy who shows up ready to spar 8 again a second day, as opposed to the guy who calls in and says, too tired or some other kind of excuse.
Got you.
And especially if they're looking good, but I say, no, 5's enough. Stop. But coach, I want to do more. Save it for next week.
God,
They're getting close.
that makes a lot of sense. So it's, again, you're not looking at the skill set, you're looking at the mentality.
The mentality and the desire.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'm learning a lot of I'm learning a lot of interesting stuff from you. Like you have a different perspective than the majority of people that I've spoken to in this field. I like it. I like to learn as much as I can, right? Like, that's why I'm here. This is one of the most complicated things you can do, and I have a deep desire to know everything that there is to know. Right. So I'll just keep plugging along until I know it all. And people don't seem to process combat sports in the same way that you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Plenty of people process it in plenty of ways. Some better, some worse, some just different, right? But like the methodology, the mindset you have about these things is very different than what I've heard from other people. You've given me a lot of things that I'm going to chew on for a number of years. Right? That's probably your 185,000 years in combat sports.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Traveling all the way. So you went to Japan, you went to Brazil, did you go anywhere else?
In 44 countries.
You went to all for like combat sports?
Mostly judo and sambo.
That's crazy.
MMA only took me to really MMA only took me to places I had been before for judo. I never was a judo. I never was. MMA took me to Brazil.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But Russia and Japan I had been before for judo and sambo. But I traveled all. The big travel was for sambo because I was at the highest level going to lots of international tournaments.
How did you get into sambo? Because that's such an unusual martial art in this area.
God, I don't even. It was just some judo people. In the early '90s, a judo club out of Oklahoma that had judo and sambo was hosting a sambo nationals, and they invited me to come down. It was Pat Burris's judo program, and they hosted or co-hosted U.S. Sambo Nationals, and I went down there and tried it and was successful right away. So,
were you doing sports sambo or combat sambo?
I did all sports sambo.
Okay.
The combat sambo existed, but not competition combat sambo until after I was gone. But I was approached a couple years back about coaching combat sambo for the U.S. National Federation, but when I realized they want everything, all the travel was going to be on my own pocket. I couldn't see that.
How did you even afford to go to 44 countries on, like, did you pay out of pocket for that?
I got very fortunate. A friend of mine introduced me to a Russian restaurant owner in the Milwaukee area, and we found out he did sambo all his life when he was a kid before he left Russia in his late teens, and he was a very generous sponsor of me going all over the place.
Wow.
To the point where I'd be at the Sambo World Cup, and I'd be talking to coaches. For instance, I'd talk to a coach from Latvia and Lithuania, and they'd say, you should come back in 2 months and go do Latvian Open and Lithuanian Open. I go, well, tell me the dates and the cities. Oh, okay. I go see Evgeny at the restaurant and tell him I got invited to go. And they were like 3 weekends in a row. The countries put them together that way so foreigners could travel and just hit 3 of them in a row. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, their international opens were 1 weekend apart, so countries could group their travel together and I'd say, tell Evgeny, I got invited to this, this, and this. Oh, Adrian, how much do you think it'll cost? I'd give him a number. He'd say, okay, no problem, my friend. And off I went.
Good for you.
Yeah, I got lucky there.
I gotta find one of those.
Yeah.
Very cool. Where was the most interesting place you traveled?
I like Japan. I like Japan.
Yeah. Got you. Have you been back for non-competition reasons?
No.
Okay.
I wanted very, very much, and it actually never was going to happen. I looking at the money changed our mind and the way travel was at the time, but it actually never happened. But I really, really wanted to try and take my son to the Tokyo Olympics and see judo or wrestling, maybe both. I knew that the judo tickets would be super expensive, but my son likes Greco more than freestyle, and I did a little bit of looking, and Greco would have been the most affordable of if you looked at men's freestyle, men's Greco-Roman, women's wrestling, which is women's freestyle, and judo. Of those four, Greco-Roman would have been the most of probably face value tickets, where everything else would have been jacked up in Tokyo, because Japanese aren't thrilled with Greco-Roman wrestling.
Really?
Yeah, they're great at freestyle, and their women's program is the best in the world, and their freestyle is very good. Their Greco is just okay, but and the other thing is that the stadium where they held wrestling and judo was a stadium that I fought in twice. So I would have been I would have, in theory, the theory was take my 8-year-old son to the Tokyo Olympics and get to see judo, Olympic wrestling, Olympic judo in a stadium that I fought in.
That would have been a crazy experience.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's a stadium that was originally built for the '64 Olympics, and they referred 4 or 5 times Yoyogi Stadium in Tokyo. And I fought there once for Pancrase in the late '90s, and I also fought there the '96 World Sambo Championships were in that stadium too. And they hosted judo and wrestling for this last Olympics. And of course, the Olympics moved back a year, and then they eventually had it with no fans anyways.
Oh yeah.
It never would have worked, but looking at the costs, I abandoned that pipe dream a year early. Let's say.
Maybe if the gym was $61 instead of $60,
I think 62 or 63 would do it.
Probably. That's all you need.
Would have made the difference. Yeah. But I would have loved
to the worlds. There's probably judo worlds are probably in Tokyo.
Oh yeah, every few years. We're looking at going. We're talking about going to Iowa to watch the Freestyle World Cup in December.
Got you.
Do you remember my old friend DC Lewis? Remember that name? DC
Lewis. Oh yeah. Shorter bald guy. He coached at your school for a while, right?
Yeah, he lives in Arizona now, but we're talking. He's I thought you would remember him. If we're gonna pull it off, he lives in Arizona now, but he's about due to visit sometime in next year or so. So he'll come and visit, and my family and DC and his son drive from Milwaukee to Coralsville.
My little brother lives in Coralville, Iowa. He wrestled for the Hawkeyes, so he still lives there.
Yeah, that's where they're having the Freestyle World Cup
in December.
That's the freestyle, men's and women's freestyle in a dual meet format. So you would advance as a team. You have your 10 weight. You have your 10 weights of. First round would be like maybe, let's say, United States versus Kazakhstan, 10 weight classes. The team that advances, the team that wins moves on in the winners bracket. The team that loses drops down in the losers bracket. You move based on a team win, not as an individual win.
Oh, very cool.
So it's a freestyle World Cup, and it's actually going to be the first time they're having the men's and women's freestyle World Cup together. I don't even know how many times they've had the women's freestyle World Cup. They probably have only had it a few times. I mean less than 10, 5 to 10, but it's the first time they're going to do it with the men's. And it's in Iowa in like the second weekend in December.
Okay. Maybe I'll use that as my excuse to get out there a little before Christmas. Then I don't have to deal with the travel of Christmas.
Right.
All right, I got to go see my brother around that time anyways.
Yeah.
Hop into the Freestyle World Championships.
Freestyle World Cup.
Freestyle World Cup. World Cup.
Well,
it'll be different.
They call what they call the freestyle World Championships. You advance as an individual.
Yeah.
Like Kyle Dake at 74 kilos, he advances individually. But in the World Cup, you have a 10-man team, every weight class against every weight class of the other team. If you win, you move on. I think actually what they do at the Freestyle World Cup is there's I think it's 12 teams, or no, I think it's 16 teams, and you do a round robin first with 3 other teams. And out of that round robin, the team that's 3-0 and the team that's 2-1 advance into a bracket.
Okay.
I think World Cup soccer.
That's how the World Cup works. Yeah, you get points for victory. That's interesting.
Right. So because the soccer World Cup, right? One of the biggest events in the world, right?
Yep.
Next Olympics, they do that too, where there's they call it a knockout pool, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
They use the term knockout pool, which basically is a 4-team round robin, and the team that goes 3-0 in that round robin, the team that goes 2-1 in that round robin, advance and get put in a bracket. And the teams that go 3-0 go against the team that went 2-1 in the first round.
Yeah, then they seed it after that.
Then after that, it's all even.
Got you. Very interesting.
They do that in the World Cup of Wrestling too.
I was listening to Khabib Nurmagomedov talk to a couple other grapplers, and he was saying that a gold medal in judo is more prestigious than a gold medal in wrestling, because 125 countries compete in judo and only like 57 compete in wrestling.
Yeah, he's talking raw numbers. He might. I don't know if he's right, but it's a plausible argument just because the sheer number of participants, your sheer number in the pool that's trying to get there. In wrestling, that number's a lot smaller. But we compare it to wrestling in the U.S. and Russia and women in China and Japan. For men's wrestling, Russia, the United States, we draw some superstar athletes that hang in there, and especially now. And I read this is that I think there's more wrestlers hanging out and trying to do a couple years of freestyle or Greco after college, with the eye on MMA after that. But the wrestling world thinks that MMA is helping more athletes stay around wrestling post collegiate because of MMA.
Oh.
Because of the prize, because they're looking at what they say. There's more athletes staying around after 21, 22 years old for freestyle and Greco after college, and they think it's looking at the wrestlers that have made it in MMA, the more recent ones, the DC and such.
Yeah. And then they show up with those accolades. They do super, super well. That's what I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Most of them get out of college and then they get into MMA because there's no, like Gable Stevenson. Stevenson just went into professional wrestling
after
being suited by being whatever that word is, courted by both the UFC and by Vince McMahon.
Right.
You don't see a lot of those people that are talking about doing those extra 4 years. Like Bo Nickel is already doing amateur fights. He's about to have a last amateur fight, and then he's going to go start pro competition. Right, like the idea of sticking around for an Olympic cycle. Like my brother has no interest in doing MMA, but he's interested in being an Olympian. So he's part of their wrestling club. But they only give you 2 cycles. You get 2 Olympic cycles to try and do it, and then after that, you're out.
Right.
That's an interesting concept that it would be encouraging them to stay in later. Because then you have people like Jordan Burroughs, who was going to go into MMA, and he said wrestling needs him.
Right.
That he can't go into MMA because wrestling needs him. And that's a that's another interesting concept.
Then he also put out a dollar amount it would take for him to do an MMA fight, and I don't think anyone wanted to take it.
Probably. I mean,
he put out a big number. I don't remember what it was right now. I mean, he might have said $1 million. I don't know.
If you're declaring dollars and cents before you've ever had a fight, like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, they were paying Greg Hardy for his like first professional fight, that kind of stuff. There's been a couple of guys. Who's the there was a giant Russian who was favored to win. He's a heavyweight. He was favored to win the last Olympics, and he got signed to the UFC.
Oh.
He ever had a fight.
I don't know if he ever got it. I think it started with a BOL something.
And then he didn't win in the Olympics either. And I don't think he's going on to MMA. I don't think he's doing MMA anymore, which is just interesting.
I lost track of him, but in fact, he was. Not only that, he was. They had declared that he was going to make the Olympic team in Greco and freestyle.
Yep.
Which just doesn't happen very often anymore with the powerhouse countries. Some of the lesser countries do, but then they're more likely to make the still good wrestling countries, like let's say a Belgium or Bulgaria. Still, Bulgaria might still have somebody that makes a world championship for Bulgaria for freestyle and Greco. That happens more because there's this, again, it's a small a small talent pool.
Yes.
But because of the restrictions on the Olympics, they normally aren't going to make the field for the Olympics in both styles because only 18 people make the field for Olympics, 16 or 18. Whereas World Championships, they have a lot more. You see some of the weight classes above 32 wrestlers.
Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, Olympics are a lot more restrictive.
Yeah, they cut out weight classes too, right?
Oh no, they don't cut out weight classes. Still, well, yeah. Olympics have less weight classes, but it's also you have to qualify through your continent. Your country qualifies by like the U.S. It's all about the Pan American Championships, the Pan American Games, and the European countries about the European Championships, and the Asian countries Asian Championships. You have to, like Americans have to take gold or silver in the Pan Am Games to set their weight class up, and it's a lot of times the wrestler doesn't even make the Olympic team later because they were the guy at the Pan Ams 2 years earlier, but that doesn't guarantee them a spot on the Olympic team. It just guarantees the country will have a representative at that weight, at the 86 kilos, at the 74 kilos. And
I know a guy who did that for Puerto Rico.
What?
I know a guy who just did that for Puerto Rico.
Right.
What tournament they allowed him into, but he took third. Sebastian Rivera. He took third at the Nationals this year. He beat Spencer Lee throughout the summer. So his dad is the head coach at the place that I wrestle at. And instead of bothering to compete against Americans for a spot, he went and qualified Puerto Rico to compete on the international stage. Because ain't nobody wrestling like Sebastian Rivera is coming out of Puerto Rico.
Right.
So now they have the opportunity to compete at international tournaments, and he represents them because of that. But who knows, like, by the time the Olympic comes, will he be that guy?
Right.
Right,
Yeah, because you qualify your country for that weight class. Oh,
very interesting. Very, very interesting. So you said you don't like, you were opposed to amateur MMA. Are you still opposed to amateur MMA?
no, I guess I'm not opposed to it, but I mean, I know it's necessary, so I'm not opposed to it anymore. I just was like, back in those days, I just thought you should get paid to get hit in the head.
Well, the reason I asked is I was just listening to the guys from American Top Team talk, and they were saying, why did these guys take so many amateur fights? Like Movisar, the Mohammed Movisar, the flyweight that fought last week. He's 6-0, but he has like 27 amateur fights. He's 21 years old. He had like 27 amateur fights. Right? And they're like, that's nuts. Why do you have that many amateur fights? Like, why aren't you just getting paid?
Yeah, I guess I should say I would be opposed to that many amateur fights.
Got you.
But
because then I hear other people say, like, go and learn all your lessons before it affects your record and follow more of the boxing model.
Yeah.
Where you see guys who've had, like, the Matrix guy. His name starts with a V. The best footwork guy, Lomachenko.
Yeah.
Lomachenko was like 298-1 in amateur boxing before he got into professional boxing. He got his first world title at like his 6th fight or something crazy.
Yeah, but I believe boxing, when they talk about amateur fights, go back to teen years. Those aren't just adults. So that's a little bit different because in most places, MMA, amateur MMA, it still has to be an adult. So you're not going to have those kind of records.
Yeah, or you got to have your dad sign for it or something like that. Like Sergio was like 15 when he had his first amateur fight. I think Sergio had like one amateur fight and then went pro. I'm making that up, but it was like Sergio Pettis was a pro fighter by the time he was 17 or 16 or something. Something ridiculous. But,
well, I think most of the states have the 18-year-old rule. That's why the people are doing those pancreation fights. With the pancreation fights, you can do a younger age.
Yeah, Jake does those on the Pure FC shows.
Right.
Has pancreation fights. That makes a lot of sense.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not the biggest boxing guy, but I'm pretty sure that's why you see such huge amateur numbers when they talk about a pro with 200 fights, is that they go back to their teen years, maybe even earlier. I'm not sure. It is earlier.
When I was in Thailand, one of my coaches had over 600 fights.
Yeah.
Right, between Muay Thai and boxing, it was like at the time that they put his name on the wall, it said 626 fights plus. Like, and I looked at him like he wasn't an old man. If you told me he was 28, I would have believed you. If you told me he was 40, I wouldn't have believed you. Like, how do you? What? Did you do a tournament every weekend?
Yeah, probably.
The Thais they're a different breed of combat.
Oh yeah.
Very, very interesting, their upbringing. So, do you have anything else you think that people need to know about you?
No, I think that's more than most people need to know about me.
You gave away too many secrets already.
Maybe.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Like I said, you gave me quite a few nuggets of wisdom that I'm going to chew on for a while that will likely influence the way that I see combat sports for years to come.
Oh, good.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for agreeing. I'm going to end the live if I can figure out how.